In my heart, it is always spooky season, and I am constantly reading horror books, but I love a good challenge, and Cassidy from Covers with Cassidy just made the seasonal spooky challenge, so obviously I'm going to participate. This is a really fun setup. There's 4 different sections to it, so I'm going to go through them. Some of them have to fit with other sections. Some of them you can just pick random books. So I have 13 books on my TBR. I definitely did that on purpose to make this as spooky as possible. I will have Cassidy's video linked in the description where she goes over this a little bit more. She also has her TBR and some recommendations in that. I'm just going to be talking about the books that I plan on reading for this. I'm very excited for all of these books. I tried to mostly pick books from my shelves, but I have a couple other ones because this is a challenge. And it's not like so hard that you obviously can't do it, but I just couldn't fit all the prompts with books I already owned. So first we have the setting categories, so you have to read a book for each of these 8 settings. You can't double up on this part. So first up for urban, I have 13 stories by Jonathan Sims. I could not find his name because it's hidden in there. So this is following people going to a dinner party that is held in the penthouse of a multi-million pound, pound as in money in the UK. I was like, what does that mean? Development. Rich people. All the guests are strangers, even to their host, the billionaire owner of the building. I haven't read this. None of them know why they were selected to receive his invitation. Whether privileged or deprived, they share one thing in common. They've all experienced a shocking disturbance within the building's walls. By the end of the night, their host is dead, and none of the guests will say what happened. His death has remained one of the biggest unsolved mysteries until now. But are you ready for their stories? So we are getting 13 stories, I guess, piecing together what happened this night. I am super, super excited about this one. Next up, we have Summer Camp. For this, I am reading Heads Will Roll by Josh Winning. I enjoyed his previous book, Burn the Negative, but it was like a 3.5 star for me, and I've heard that this one is even better, and I've had it personally recommended to me, so very excited about that. And this says, Willow's worst nightmare was being canceled, but the shadows in the woods of Camp Castaway might destroy more than her reputation. She's a sitcom star and tweeted herself into infamy and stumbled blind drunk into a swimming pool, and then her agent shipped her off to Camp Castaway. It is a summer camp for adults who are desperate to leave their mistakes behind. No real names, no phones, no way to call for help. And then one of the campers vanishes, and Willow finds a mutilated doll in her room with a threatening message rolled up inside its mouth. Incredible. Next up, we have Isolated, and for this, I have Dollhouse by John Hunt. This is following Olivia, who is about to start university. She's excited to be on her own, meet new friends, and then she moves in, and she's taken off the street by 2 masked men, the Jackal and the Gorilla, and she's placed in a room which is little more than a cell, and it's pink, and it's a room made for a doll, and she's now part of their collection. A little tiny room is pretty isolated to me. Next up is Small Town, and for this I have The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Christie. The Velkwood vicinity is the topic of occult theorists, tabloid 1-hour documentaries, and even some pseudo-scientific investigations. The block of homes disappeared behind a near impenetrable veil that only 3 survivors could enter, and only one has in the past 20 years until now. So, Talitha has avoided anything to do with the tragedy that took her mother and 8-year-old sister, but a new researcher tracks her down and offers to pay her to go back in. I've heard such good things about this one. I've heard this is a pretty unique take on a story like this. Next up is Southern, and my pick for this is I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. This is set in a small town in Texas. Amber is the only native student in town, and Tolly is only on the radar due to his father's recent death. And it's all about to change. Bodies are going to start dropping, and we are following the slasher in this book, which I cannot wait for. I love Stephen Graham Jones. I've loved so many of his books, and the concept of this one sounds like it could be my favorite of his. Next up is Haunted House. For this one, I have Delicious Monsters by Lizelle Sandberry. This is dual timeline, a decade apart, both set in this house. So Daisy sees dead people, and her mother inherits this secluded mansion, and the house has some secrets in it. And then a decade later, we are following someone who has a haunted web series who is trying to uncover what happened to the young black girl in the mansion 10 years prior and exposing her mother. Next up is Coastal, and for this one I have Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin. It is set in New York City, which isn't like known as a coastal town. Like, it's not beachy, but it's right on the coast. And I keep putting this one off even though it's so tiny because I'm just really scared. I don't actually know what the synopsis of this book is, but I know it has a little creepy baby in here. And the last one is In the Woods. And for this, you cannot really see. It's a little embossed. So I have The Camp by Nancy Bush. I have this fun special edition from Twisted Retreat. Where's the synopsis? There are always stories told around the fire at summer camp, tall tales about gruesome murders and unhinged killers. They're at Camp Luft Shock, nicknamed Camp Love Shack, and there's stories about a creeping fog that brings death in. There was a death 20 years ago, and now the camp is renamed and reopened, and something is stirring in the lake again. So those are my 8 books for the setting part of the challenge. Now there's an unlocking challenge where there is 8 more, and you have to fit all of them with a book from the settings. So for young adult, I have Delicious Monsters. A book you didn't buy, I have The Camp. A new to you author, 13 stories. A novella, Dollhouse. Diverse rep, I Was a Teenage Slasher. Audiobook, Rosemary's Baby. This obviously is not an audiobook, but I've had the audiobook from Libra FM for a long time. On someone else's TBR, Heads Will Roll. This is also on Cassidy's TBR, and I told her to put it on hers even though I have not read it, so hopefully we'll both like it. And a new release, The Haunting of Velkwood. There is more, so there are some cover prompts. There are 8 of these, and these can be books from the settings part of the challenge, but it does not have to, so some of mine fit and other ones did not, so I have some other books to add. For hands, I have Delicious Monsters. For window, I have Dollhouse. For weapon, I have Heads Will Roll. For animal, I have a new one, Girl Among Crows. This is by Brandon Veo, and this is another Twisted Retreat edition. It says, Beware the Brotherhood of the Raven. 2 boys vanish from her hometown, and Daphne notices uncanny parallels to her brother's disappearance 30 years earlier. And then there's symbols that show up, and there's a sacrifice, and dark family secrets, and trying to unmask a killer. For blood, I have another new one, Ghost Camera by Darcy Coates. This is actually a kind of short story collection. The main one in here is Ghost Camera, and that I believe is 100 and whatever pages, 112 pages, and that's the main story, and then it's a bunch of short stories afterwards. This is following a character who finds an abandoned Polaroid camera, and there's something wrong with the image. A ghostly figure stands in the background watching her. And then I'm assuming all the other stories are also kind of ghostly. I'm pretty much trying to read all of Darcy Coates' books. I really like her stuff, so this is her newest one, and I'm excited to get to it. For tech, 13 stories. There's these elevator buttons. For eyeballs, I have a new one, The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. The eyeballs are definitely very prominent on this one. The cover challenges are supposed to be something that's like a main feature of the book, something that stands out, something that's very prominent. You definitely can stretch prompts and stuff, but this one on my shelves worked pretty well. I somehow have not seen this. I haven't read it. I haven't been spoiled for it, really. So I need to finally get to this one. There's an exorcist happening. That's all I want to know. And for water, The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Christie. One more thing. There are some bonus challenges. These are just things that you find in books throughout. It does not have to be part of anything you've already planned. It can be totally up to you. So there are 6 for this. So first up, we have vampires, and for this I'm going to read So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. This is following Sloane. She's dreading her birthday, and she doesn't need a reminder she's getting older. Her husband surprises her with a birthday weekend getaway, but not with him, with her longtime best friend and troublemaker extraordinaire Naomi. They arrive at their rental cabin, and it becomes clear that Naomi has something else in mind. She wants Sloane to stop letting things happen for her, and for her to really live. So she orchestrates a wild night out with a group of mysterious strangers, only for it to take a horrifying turn that changes Sloane and Naomi's lives literally forever. I loved Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison, so I'm excited to get to this one. Next up is cults. So for this, I have Girl Among Crows. Then we have cannibals. So for this, I'm going to be reading Kin by Keelan Patrick Burke. 2 of his novellas are absolutely my favorites, so I'm excited to get to a full-length book of his. This one is... well, Goodreads is not very helpful. It just says signed limited edition of 750 copies. Okay. Well, what am I supposed to do with that? Well, I know there's cannibals, so I think it's gross, bloody cannibalism. That's so weird that there's not a synopsis on there, but I'm gonna read it. Next up is mixed media. For this, I'm reading The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. This feels like a little bit of a stretch, but it's written as a memoir that is edited to be turned into a novel because the person that read it does not agree that it's a memoir. So we're getting all of these edits to it, and then there's also some parts where there's like sticky notes put in. I don't know what this is, but there's like other things, so I'm counting this. But yeah, this is two friends who meet a long time ago. One of them writes a memoir, and then the other one ends up getting it, reading it, making notes. I'm like, this is not it. And then I think this has something to do with vampires, but it's very heavily focused on friendship. I just loved horror movies, so I'm so excited to get to this one. For ghosts, we have Delicious Monsters. And for serial killer, I was a teenage slasher. A slasher, are they technically considered serial killers? Like, probably not, but they're killing multiple people, so it counts. So these 10 plus these 3 are my TBR for the seasonal spooky challenge hosted by Cassidy from Covers with Cassidy. I will have her video linked in the description for you so you can check that out. And that also has the link for the graphic that you can use to post it on Instagram or whatever. Let me know in the comments if you have any recommendations for any of these prompts. I read horror all the time, so I'm always looking for books that fit really any of these. I just realized that I was missing a book, so I actually have 14, so I lied about the whole 13 thing, so sorry about that. If you made it to the end and wanted to leave me an emoji to say you were here, you can leave me a heart, like an anatomical heart, or really a regular like this one, if you prefer that. If you like spooky books, I read them all the time. So all these books plus more will be in tons of upcoming videos. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope to see you soon. Bye.